The coffee cup trembled in her hand. 8 men surrounded her, laughter bouncing off the cinder block walls. Coffee girl, they called her. Walking through the armory door, none of them knew. Before that cup hit the ground, those 8 men would watch every weapon in the room disassembled, reassembled, and lined up on the table. 40 seconds. None of them had noticed yet, but this base was about to learn a lesson they'd never forget. Because her hands weren't trained just to carry coffee. They were trained to neutralize lethal weapons without blinking. Nobody questioned it. Nobody wondered. But very soon, everyone would learn. She wasn't the coffee girl. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Military and Veteran Stories so you never miss these powerful tales of courage. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Her name was Corporal Rhea Calloway, though around Fort Ironclad, people just called her the new girl or admin assistant, or, when they thought she couldn't hear, that coffee girl. She'd been assigned to the armory department 3 weeks ago. Paperwork said logistics support. Her uniform had no patches, no badges, nothing that screamed expertise. She was quiet, polite, always arrived early, and somehow always had fresh coffee ready when the morning weapons inspection crews showed up. Staff Sergeant Kendrick Voss didn't like her. Not because she'd done anything wrong, but because she was different. Small frame, barely 5'4", soft voice, and she smiled too much for someone working in an armory where the standard greeting was a grunt and a nod. Voss ran the department like his personal kingdom. 15 years in service, 2 deployments, and enough stories to fill a bar tab. He wore his experience like armor. "Yo, coffee girl," he'd bark most mornings. "Make yourself useful. 2 sugars, light cream." His crew would laugh. Not cruel laughter, just the kind men use when they're trying to fit in, trying to show they're part of the pack. Rhea would nod, smile, and bring the coffee. She never complained, never rolled her eyes, never corrected them. But here's what nobody knew. Rhea Calloway didn't just carry coffee. She carried secrets. The kind written in redacted files buried 3 levels deep in military intelligence archives. Before Fort Ironclad, she'd spent 6 years in a unit most soldiers didn't even know existed. A unit that didn't have a name on any official roster. They called themselves the Wrench Crew. Explosive ordnance disposal techs, weapons engineers, field armorers who could strip, repair, or disable anything that fired, exploded, or killed. Rhea had trained in basements in Berlin, desert bunkers in Kandahar, and frozen outposts in Norway. She'd disarmed live IEDs while insurgents fired overhead. She'd rebuilt sniper rifles with broken firing pins using nothing but a multi-tool and wire. She'd once taken apart a Russian PKM machine gun blindfolded in under 90 seconds, just to prove to a skeptical commander that darkness didn't slow her down. Why was someone with that resume pouring coffee at a stateside armory? Because she'd requested it. After 6 years in the shadows, after too many close calls and sleepless nights, she wanted quiet. She wanted normal. She wanted to breathe without checking for tripwires. Command approved her transfer with one condition: don't make waves. Keep your skills to yourself unless absolutely necessary. So she did. She filed paperwork. She organized inventory. She smiled when they called her coffee girl. And she waited. Because patience is a skill too. One most people never learn. On Tuesday morning, everything changed. The base was preparing for an annual combat readiness inspection. Generals from the Pentagon were flying in. Every unit had to demonstrate flawless operational capability. That included the armory. Every weapon had to be inspection-ready, clean, functional, documented. Voss was sweating. His crew had been sloppy. Maintenance logs were incomplete. 3 rifles had jamming issues nobody had fixed. And worst of all, the new SmartLock weapon storage system had malfunctioned overnight, locking 60 firearms inside a cage with no override code working. "This is a disaster," Voss muttered, pacing the armory floor. His crew stood around looking worried. Nobody had answers. The IT specialist was 2 hours away. The inspection started in 4 hours. If they couldn't open that cage and present those weapons, the whole base would look incompetent. Voss's career would take a hit. Maybe worse. Rhea stood near the corner, holding her usual coffee tray. She watched. She listened. She calculated. Then she set the tray down gently on a desk and spoke. Her voice was calm, steady, the kind of calm that doesn't ask for attention but somehow commands it anyway. Sergeant Voss, I can help. The room went quiet. Not the respectful kind of quiet. The confused kind. Voss turned, eyebrows raised like she'd just suggested they all start doing yoga. Help how exactly? He asked, not hiding his skepticism. You gonna sweet-talk the lock open? A few guys chuckled. Rhea didn't flinch. I can bypass the electronic system and manually release the locking mechanism. It'll take about 12 minutes. Won't damage anything. Fully reversible once IT fixes the code. Voss stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You know how to do that? Rhea nodded. I've worked with similar systems before. Where at Starbucks? Someone muttered. More laughter. But Voss wasn't laughing anymore. He was desperate. And desperate men take risks. Fine, he said, waving a hand. You've got 15 minutes. If you break it worse, it's on you. Rhea walked to the cage. She pulled a small toolkit from her pocket. Not standard issue. Custom. Compact. Well-worn. She knelt beside the electronic panel, removed 4 screws, and exposed the circuit board beneath. Her fingers moved without hesitation. She bypassed 2 fail-safes, rerouted power through an auxiliary line, and manually triggered the solenoid release. 12 minutes later, the cage door clicked open. Silence. Then Voss exhaled like he'd been holding his breath underwater. Holy hell. You actually did it. Rhea stood, brushed dust off her knees, and smiled. Told you it wouldn't take long. But wait. That wasn't the moment that changed everything. That was just the warm-up. Because 20 minutes later, the real test began. The inspection team arrived early. A colonel, 2 majors, and a civilian contractor who specialized in weapons systems evaluations. They wanted a live demonstration. Not just clean guns sitting pretty. They wanted to see speed, efficiency, technical knowledge. They wanted proof this armory crew knew their job. The colonel pointed at a table covered with disassembled rifles, pistols, and machine gun components. Parts mixed together. No labels. Chaos. Reassemble these, he said flatly. Correctly. 10 minutes. Go. Voss's crew froze. This wasn't normal. This was a stress test. A setup to see if they'd crack. Voss grabbed a rifle barrel, started sorting parts, but his hands were shaking. His guys followed, fumbling, second-guessing every piece. Rhea stood back near the coffee station. She wasn't part of the official armory crew. She wasn't supposed to participate. But she saw the panic. She saw the clock ticking. She saw careers about to crumble. And then she made a choice. She stepped forward. Sir, permission to assist, she said quietly to the colonel. He glanced at her, surprised anyone else was even in the room. Who are you? Corporal Rhea Calloway, logistics support, sir. He smirked. Logistics? You know weapons assembly. Yes, sir. He looked at Voss. Voss shrugged, still too stressed to care. The colonel waved a hand. Fine. Show me what you've got, Corporal. And that's when everything changed. Rhea moved to the table. Her eyes scanned the chaos of parts like she was reading a language only she understood. Springs, firing pins, bolts, magazines, stocks. Her hands moved. Not fast in a flashy way. Fast in a way that looked effortless. Smooth. Inevitable. Like water finding its way downhill. She picked up a receiver. Slid in a bolt carrier. Locked a charging handle. Her fingers never hesitated. Never fumbled. Within 90 seconds, she'd assembled a complete M4 rifle. She set it down. Moved to the next pile. A Beretta M9 pistol. Slide, barrel, recoil spring magazine. 40 seconds. Done. Then a saw machine gun. Complex. Heavy. Most soldiers need a manual. She built it in 3 minutes flat. The room had gone dead silent. Voss stopped moving. His crew stopped moving. Even the colonel leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Rhea kept going. She assembled 2 more rifles, a shotgun, and a grenade launcher. When the 10-minute timer buzzed, she stepped back. 8 weapons sat on the table. Fully assembled. Perfectly functional. She hadn't broken a sweat. The civilian contractor, a wiry man in his 50s with sharp eyes, walked to the table. He picked up each weapon. Checked chamber. Checked safety. Checked sights. He looked up at Rhea, confused, almost annoyed. Where did you train? He asked. Rhea hesitated. Her orders were to stay quiet. But the cat was already halfway out of the bag. Various locations, sir. Specialized field armorer training. The contractor's eyes widened slightly. He knew what that meant. He'd been in the game long enough to recognize the phrase. Specialized field armorer wasn't a job title. It was a code. It meant black ops. It meant you'd worked in places that didn't show up on maps. But hold on. The story doesn't end there. Because if you thought that was impressive, you haven't seen anything yet. The real shock came 5 minutes later when the colonel asked one more question. A question nobody expected. "Corporal," he said slowly, studying her face like he was trying to place a memory. "Have we met before?" Rhea met his eyes. She could have lied. Should have lied. But something in his tone told her he already knew. "Yes, sir." Briefly. "Operation Tempest Line. I repaired your convoy's communications array after the ambush outside Helmand Province." The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Operation Tempest Line was classified. The kind of classified that doesn't get mentioned in open rooms. The kind that ends careers if you talk about it carelessly. The colonel's face shifted. Respect replaced skepticism. "You were part of Wrench crew," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Rhea nodded once. Voss looked like someone had just told him the coffee girl was actually an astronaut. "Wait, Wrench crew? The ghost unit? The ones who—" He trailed off because even he didn't know the full story. Nobody did except the people who'd been there. The colonel turned to Voss. "Sergeant, do you have any idea who's been making your coffee for 3 weeks?" Voss shook his head, speechless. The colonel almost smiled. "This woman has more field experience than your entire crew combined. She's disarmed live explosives under fire. She's rebuilt weapons systems in combat zones with half the parts missing. And you've had her fetching coffee." The silence was deafening. One of Voss's guys, a young private named Elias Kern, finally spoke up. "Why didn't you say anything?" he asked Rhea, genuinely confused. Rhea shrugged. "Nobody asked. But here's the thing. It wasn't about pride. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong." Rhea had learned a long time ago that the loudest voices in a room are rarely the most skilled. Real professionals don't need to announce themselves. They just do the work. And when the moment comes, when lives or careers or missions are on the line, that's when they step up. Not before. Not for applause. Just when it matters. The inspection ended. The colonel gave the armory a perfect score. As he was leaving, he stopped beside Rhea. "Corporal, you're wasted here. I'm putting in a recommendation to transfer you back to advanced field operations. We need people like you." Rhea smiled politely. "Thank you, sir. But I requested this assignment. I'm exactly where I want to be." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Understood. But if you ever change your mind, you've got my direct line." After he left, the armory was still. Voss approached Rhea slowly, like someone approaching a wild animal they'd misjudged. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "A big one." Rhea shook her head. "You don't owe me anything, Sergeant. You were doing your job. I was doing mine." "By making coffee?" he asked, half smiling, half ashamed. "By keeping things calm," she replied. "Sometimes that's the most important job in the room." Voss extended his hand. Rhea shook it. His grip was firm but respectful now. Different. The kind of handshake you give someone you've underestimated and won't make that mistake again. Over the next few days, word spread across Fort Ironclad. The coffee girl wasn't just a coffee girl. She was a ghost. A legend hiding in plain sight. Soldiers started treating her differently. Not with fear. With respect. The kind you give someone who's earned it the hard way. But Rhea didn't change. She still arrived early. Still made coffee. Still smiled. Because she understood something most people forget. Titles don't make you valuable. Skills do. Character does. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is stay quiet until the world needs you to speak. One afternoon, a week after the inspection, Private Kern approached her nervously. "Corporal, can I ask you something?" "Sure," Rhea said, organizing inventory sheets. "Why do you still make the coffee?" "You don't have to anymore. Everyone knows now." Rhea paused, considering the question. Then she smiled. "Because it's not about what people know. It's about what needs doing. Someone has to make the coffee. Might as well be me." Kern nodded slowly, absorbing the lesson. "That's actually pretty cool. Plus," Rhea added with a grin, "I make really good coffee." Kern laughed. And for the first time since arriving at Fort Ironclad, Rhea felt like she belonged. Not because people finally knew her credentials, but because they saw her. The real her. Not a resume, not a legend. Just a soldier who showed up, did the work, and didn't need a spotlight to prove her worth. So what's the moral of this story? Maybe it's this. The world is full of people who talk big, who demand attention, who need everyone to know how important they are. But the truly dangerous ones, the truly capable ones, are often the quietest. They're the ones pouring coffee, the ones fixing things nobody notices, the ones who, when the moment comes, don't hesitate. They just move. Smooth, certain, unstoppable. Rhea Calloway taught Fort Ironclad a lesson that day. A lesson about assumptions, about respect, about the danger of judging someone by their surface. Because sometimes, the person you underestimate is the same person who'll save your career, your mission, or your life when everything falls apart. And next time you see someone doing a job that seems small, that seems unimportant, maybe think twice. Maybe ask yourself, what don't I know about this person? What skills are hidden beneath the surface? What battles have they fought that I'll never hear about? Because the coffee girl might not be a coffee girl at all. She might be the most dangerous person in the room. And you'll never know until the moment you need her most. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more military and veteran tales that honor the courage, skill, and quiet strength of those who serve. And before you go, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? And have you ever underestimated someone only to be completely proven wrong?